The wind howled through the valley like a beast that could never rest. Snow fell in thick, heavy flakes, turning the world white, cold, and silent. Arya stood at the center of the pack's sacred ground, her bare feet sinking into the ice. The thin ceremonial dress clung to her, useless against the storm. The elders had forced her to wear it, the robe of the unworthy. All around her, members of the Shadowfang pack formed a wide circle. Torches flickered in their hands, shadows twisting across their faces. Some watched her with pity, others with satisfaction. Arya could feel their judgment pressing down on her like chains. At the front of the circle stood Daemon, her fated mate or the man who was supposed to be. Tall, handsome, with dark hair and eyes that once made her believe she belonged somewhere. Now, those same eyes looked at her like she was something foul. "You know why we are here," Daemon said. His voice carried across the clearing, sharp as glass. "Before the moon and the ancestors, I, Daemon of Shadowfang, reject you, Arya of no worth. You are weak. You bring shame to the pack. I will not bind my bloodline to failure." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Arya's heart stung, but she refused to cry. The rejection words were ancient, binding, final. Once spoken, they cut deeper than any blade. She lowered her head, trembling as the magic of the bond, the one she thought she shared with him, shattered inside her. It felt like her soul tearing apart. Her knees gave out, but she caught herself on her hands. The snow burned against her palms. "Daemon," she whispered. "Please. You promised." "I promised nothing to weakness." He turned to the Alpha, standing beside him. The rite of cleansing must be completed. The Alpha, a massive man named Rhaegar, nodded solemnly. "So it will be. The pack will witness." Arya lifted her head. "The rite. That law was banned. You can't." Rhaegar's cold eyes met hers. "It was banned for the strong. Not for those who defy the will of the moon." Gasps rose from the crowd. Even among wolves, the rite of cleansing was barbaric, an ancient punishment where a rejected mate had to survive until sunrise while the pack's enforcers hunted them in wolf form. No one had ever survived it. 2 pack guards stepped forward, each gripping her arms. She struggled, but their strength was overwhelming. They dragged her to the center stone, where blood from past trials stained the surface dark. Rhaegar raised his hand. "By the moon's decree, let the trial begin. If she lives until dawn, she is free. If she dies, the spirits have spoken." The torches were thrown into the snow. One by one, the wolves began to shift, bones snapping, fur tearing through skin. 12 enforcers, their eyes glowing gold and red, circled her. The growls began low, rumbling, hungry. Arya's breath came out in clouds of white. She could taste the fear in the air. "Run," Daemon said. "Let's see how long you last." He turned away as the first wolf lunged. Arya dove to the side, barely avoiding the snapping jaws. The circle closed tighter. Panic clawed at her chest. She ran, barefoot through snow, stumbling as the cold bit into her flesh. Behind her came the sound of pursuit, heavy paws pounding the ground, growls splitting the air. The forest swallowed her. Branches whipped at her face, tearing her skin. Her lungs burned, every breath a knife. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to move, to keep the darkness from swallowing her whole. Tears froze on her cheeks. She had done nothing wrong. She had always tried to serve, to help, to be what they wanted. And still, they cast her away. The bond that was supposed to make her complete had only destroyed her. When her foot caught on a root, she fell hard into the snow. Pain exploded in her ankle. She tried to get up and froze. A low growl came from the trees ahead. Yellow eyes glowed through the darkness. The wolves stepped out of the forest, forming a loose half-circle around her. 12 of them, the pack's fiercest warriors. Their fur bristled with frost, their breath steaming. Arya's heart pounded so loud she could hear nothing else. "Please," she said softly, even though she knew begging would change nothing. "I never hurt anyone. I just want to live." The wolves snarled, closing in. Their leader, a massive grey with a scar across his muzzle, lowered his head, a signal to attack. Arya closed her eyes. If this was her end, she would face it standing. She pushed herself to her feet, shaking, the snow up to her knees. Then, silence. The growling stopped all at once. Her eyes flew open. The wolves had frozen mid-step, muscles tense, ears flattened, tails low. Their bodies trembled not with rage, but with fear. The air grew colder. The snow that had been falling lazily a moment ago now whipped around violently, stinging her face. A strange weight filled the clearing, pressing down on her chest, stealing her breath. And then she saw him. A figure stood at the edge of the trees, tall and motionless, the storm swirling around him. He wore black from head to toe, a long coat that moved like shadows, and silver hair that gleamed in the moonlight. His eyes, glowing pale silver, locked onto hers. Every wolf bowed its head. Arya could only stare. When he spoke, his voice was low, smooth, and dangerous like the calm before lightning. Enough. The wolves whimpered and backed away instantly. Even the scarred grey dropped to its belly, whining like a pup. Arya shivered. Whoever this man was, he held a power she had never felt before. The stranger began walking toward her. No sound of footsteps, just the slow movement of a predator in command of the world. The snow seemed to bend away from him. When he stopped in front of her, she could see his face clearly. It was beautiful in a cruel way, sharp cheekbones, eyes like liquid silver, expression unreadable. He looked at her for a long moment, and when he spoke again, it was a command wrapped in softness. Stand. She wanted to obey. Her body moved before her mind agreed, trembling as she rose. Who are you? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The one your pack should have feared, he said simply. Kale Draven. Alpha King of the North. Arya's knees almost gave out. The Alpha King, the ruler of all wolf packs across the northern territories, was a myth, a legend told to pups to remind them that even alphas must kneel to someone. What are you doing here? She whispered. He didn't answer right away. His silver eyes drifted over the trees, then back to her. I came because I felt a bond snap in the night. A mate rejected. A life about to end. His gaze sharpened. And then, I felt something else, something older, stronger. A power that called to me. I don't understand. He stepped closer. She wanted to step back, but couldn't. His presence held her still. You carry something ancient, Arya of Shadowfang, he said softly. Something your pack is too blind to see. They tried to kill you because they feared what they could not understand. How do you know my name? She whispered. A faint smile touched his lips, not kind, not cruel, just certain. Because I have been looking for you for a long time. Behind them, the forest rustled. Daemon emerged with Rhaegar and several others, all shifting back to human form. Their faces were pale. Your Majesty, Rhaegar said quickly, bowing. We did not know you would be visiting our lands. Kale's expression turned colder. You didn't, he said quietly. Or you would have hidden this barbarism. He gestured toward Arya. You call this justice? It is the old law, Rhaegar stammered. The right of cleansing. The old law is dead. Kale's voice thundered through the clearing, making the trees tremble. Any pack that dares practice it again will be erased from the map. Do you understand? Rhaegar dropped to his knees. Yes, Your Majesty. Kale's gaze shifted to Daemon. The younger wolf couldn't meet his eyes. You rejected her, Kale said. It wasn't a question. Daemon swallowed hard. I had the right to. She's weak. Her wolf never. You had no right. Kale's voice was soft, but it cut sharper than steel. Because she was never yours to reject. The air went utterly still. Even the snow stopped falling. What? Daemon whispered. Kale's eyes glowed brighter, silver light spilling across the ground. She belongs to no pack, because she is beyond them. Her blood carries the mark of the moon line, the first wolves, the ones who shaped this world from starlight and shadow. Arya shook her head, overwhelmed. That's impossible. I'm nobody. Kale turned to her, and for a moment, something almost gentle flickered in his expression. You are not nobody. You are the last of them. He looked back to Daemon, his tone turning to ice. You tried to kill a moon heir. Tell me, what should your punishment be? Rhaegar and Daemon both knelt, trembling. Mercy, my king, Rhaegar said quickly. We did not know. Ignorance is not innocence, Chaol said. He paused, then added, but I will grant mercy only once. The Shadowfang pack is hereby disbanded. Its lands, wolves, and title fall under my direct command. Any who refuse my rule will be exiled. He turned to Arya. You. Come with me. She hesitated. Why? I don't even know you. You will, he said. Your power has awakened. If you stay here, they will kill you before the next full moon. If you come with me, I will teach you to control what you are. Her gaze darted between Daemon's downcast face and the Alpha King's outstretched hand. She could still feel the sting of rejection, the humiliation, the ache in her chest where the bond had once been. But when she looked into Chaol's silver eyes, she felt something else: warmth. Recognition. Like the universe itself had taken a breath and said, there you are. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. Chaol's fingers closed around hers, strong, steady, impossibly warm despite the snow. You are under my protection now, he said. No one will touch you again. As he led her away, the snow began to fall harder, covering the ground where she had once knelt in despair. Behind her, the wolves bowed their heads. Before her, the storm parted. For the first time, Arya felt something new stirring in her chest, not fear, not pain. Hope. The world outside Shadowfang territory looked nothing like Arya imagined. As Chaol led her through the blizzard, the forest seemed to bow to his presence. The snow no longer hit them, swirling around instead, like the storm itself feared him. His hand never loosened from hers, firm and steady, even when the path turned rough and steep. They reached a waiting black carriage drawn by wolves, not ordinary ones, but huge, with silver fur and eyes that glowed faintly under the moonlight. The moment Chaol approached, they lowered their heads in respect. Arya stared. They understand you. They serve me, Chaol said simply. They are part of the royal guard loyal to the Northern Crown. She hesitated before stepping into the carriage. Inside, the air was warm, as if it were untouched by winter. The seats were soft, lined with fur. She sat quietly, shivering less now that she was out of the storm. Chaol sat across from her, his silver eyes watching in silence. For a long time, neither spoke. The only sounds were the muffled rhythm of paws against snow and the faint hum of magic that seemed to follow him everywhere. Finally, Arya found her voice. Why did you save me? Chaol leaned back, resting one arm against the seat. Because what I felt tonight should not have existed. A bond severed, pain, rejection, but underneath it, a call older than my crown. When I followed that call, it led to you. She frowned. A call? The blood recognizes its own, he said quietly. You are moonborn. It is not something you choose. It is what you are. Arya shook her head. My grandmother raised me in Shadowfang. She was human, I think. There's nothing special about my blood. Chaol's eyes softened slightly. Did she ever tell you stories about the first wolves? Arya blinked. She did. She said they came from the sky, wolves made of moonlight. She called them the Moonline. She was not telling you stories, Chaol said. She was warning you. Arya's chest tightened. Warning me? The Moonline wolves were powerful beyond measure. They could bend nature itself, the tide, the wind, even the bond of life and death. But that power made them targets. The other packs hunted them out of fear. The bloodline nearly vanished, until now. She stared at him. You think I'm one of them? I don't think, Chaol said. I know. Silence filled the space between them. Arya's mind spun. She remembered her grandmother's necklace, the silver pendant she was told never to remove. Her heart pounded as she reached under her torn dress and pulled it out. Chaol's gaze flicked to it immediately. May I? She nodded, and he leaned forward, brushing his thumb over the symbol engraved in the pendant, a crescent moon crossed by a line of stars. The moment he touched it, a faint silver glow spread through the carriage. This, Chaol said softly, is the crest of the Moonline. Only those born from that blood can wear it without burning. Arya's fingers trembled. Grandmother told me never to show it to anyone. She said people would take it from me. Your grandmother was wise, Kale murmured. If Shadowfang had known, you would have been dead years ago. Arya looked down, her chest heavy. I never felt powerful. I never even shifted. That's because your wolf sleeps, Kale said. She's not gone, only locked away. The Moonborn's power is too great for an untrained vessel. It would have destroyed you before you could control it. Then why now? He leaned closer, eyes gleaming silver. Because tonight, under blood, moonlight and pain, your wolf woke. When your bond with Daemon broke, your true nature answered. It called me the Alpha King. I am bound to the Moonline's survival, and to its heir. Bound? Arya repeated softly. Kale's gaze held hers, unwavering. To you. Her heart stuttered. For a long time, neither said another word. The carriage rolled through the dark until the forest thinned, and the first rays of dawn began to paint the snow in silver. Exhausted, Arya leaned against the seat. Her eyelids grew heavy. Before she drifted off, she heard his voice, low and certain. You are not weak, Arya, Kale said. You were only sleeping. When Arya woke, it was to the scent of pine and fire. She blinked, disoriented, and realized she was no longer in the carriage. She lay in a room of stone and glass, high above the ground. Through the wide windows, endless mountains stretched beneath a sky still dusted with snow. A roaring fire filled the hearth. On the table beside her bed sat a tray of bread, fruit, and steaming tea. Her legs ached, her body sore, but she was warm. For the first time in years, she wasn't cold. The door opened quietly. Kale entered, no longer in his black coat but in a dark tunic trimmed with silver threads. Even dressed simply, he carried the weight of command. You're awake, he said. Arya pushed herself up, clutching the blanket. Where am I? The citadel of Eclipse Reach, he answered. My home. And now, yours. Mine, she echoed, startled. Kale nodded once. Until you learn control, you will stay here. You are too powerful to walk unguarded among the packs. Many would hunt you simply to claim your blood. I don't want any of this, she said, voice trembling. I didn't ask to be whatever you think I am. Kale approached slowly, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. Power doesn't ask for permission, Arya. It simply wakes when it must. He stopped a few feet away. Do you remember what I told your Alpha? She nodded. You said the old laws were gone. And I meant it, Kale said. No more rituals that punish the weak. No more trials by wolves. I will rebuild the order of our kind and you will help me do it. Arya stared at him, disbelief written on her face. Me? Help you? I don't even know how to shift. He smiled faintly, a rare expression that softened the edges of his features. Then we'll start there. He extended his hand. Come. Hesitantly, she took it. His palm was warm, grounding. He led her out of the chamber and down a wide corridor lined with tapestries showing battles and moonlit beasts. Every guard they passed bowed deeply to Kale and looked at her with curiosity. They emerged onto a balcony that overlooked the mountains. The air was crisp, the world glowing under morning light. Close your eyes, Kale said quietly. Listen. Arya obeyed. Feel the bond between us, he continued. It's there, even if you don't understand it yet. A thread of silver light that ties your soul to mine. Follow it inward. Find where it ends. She focused, heart racing. For a moment, there was nothing, only silence. Then, faintly, she felt warmth pulsing in her chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. I feel something, she whispered. Good. Now breathe. Beneath that warmth lies your wolf, caged, waiting. Do not force her. Invite her. Arya reached for that warmth, and something stirred. A faint sound, a growl, distant but familiar, echoed in her mind. A shiver ran through her spine. I think she's angry, Arya said. She's not angry, Kale murmured. She's been silenced for too long. Let her know it's safe. The moment she did, a surge of heat shot through her body. Her breath hitched. Her vision flared with silver light. For a second, she saw the world differently, the snow sparkling like shards of crystal, the air alive with energy. Her senses sharpened beyond human limits. Then the rush faded, leaving her trembling. Kale's hand was on her shoulder instantly, steadying her. That was your wolf answering. She knows me now. Arya's pulse raced. That was just the beginning, he said. They stood there in silence for a while, the wind brushing through her hair. Then Kale spoke again, voice lower now. When I found you, I felt the bond forming before I even saw your face. It's rare, almost unheard of, for the moonline to bond outside its blood. Yet here we are. Arya frowned. You mean? Kale met her gaze. You are my mate, Arya. Fated by the moon itself. Her breath caught. That's not possible. Daemon was supposed to be my mate. He wasn't, Kale said. He was a mistake the moon tried to correct. The moment he rejected you, the truth was revealed. Arya shook her head slowly, as if trying to make sense of a dream. You don't even know me. I know enough, Kale said softly. I know the sound of your heartbeat when you're afraid. I know the fire in your blood when you fight to live. I know the way the snow bends around you, as if the world itself recognizes its queen. His words hit her harder than she expected. She stepped back, overwhelmed. I can't be anyone's queen. I'm just trying to survive. Kale's expression didn't change. You already survived what would have killed others. That's more than survival, Arya, that's strength. He took a step closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth against the cold air. You don't have to believe it yet, he said. But soon, you will. She looked up at him, at the Alpha King who had destroyed an entire pack's law for her, who spoke as if the universe had chosen her. And for the first time, she didn't see only power in his eyes, she saw certainty. What happens now? She asked quietly. Kale glanced toward the mountains. Now, we prepare. The packs will learn that the moonline lives again. Some will celebrate. Others will come for you. But you will not face them alone. He turned back to her, his silver eyes glowing faintly. You are under my protection. From this day forward, you are no longer Arya of Shadowfang. Then who am I? She asked. He reached out, brushing his knuckles against her cheek with unexpected gentleness. Arya of the Moonline, he said. My mate. My queen-to-be. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. For a long moment, they just stood there, the wind whispering through the mountains, the air charged with something that felt like destiny. Then Kale stepped back, his voice returning to command. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we begin your training. You'll need strength for what's coming. When he turned to leave, Arya found herself calling out softly, Kale? He paused, glancing over his shoulder. What if I fail? She asked. His expression softened in a way she hadn't seen before. You won't, he said. Because I'll never let you. He left her then, the echo of his promise hanging in the cold mountain air. Arya stayed on the balcony long after, watching the sunrise paint the snow in gold. The world felt too big, too new, and yet something deep inside her, something ancient, stirred with quiet certainty. For the first time, she didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. And somewhere deep within her, her wolf stirred and whispered in her mind a single word that made her heart race. Mine. The storm had grown fiercer by the time Kale led Arya from the Shadowfang Valley. The snow fell so thick that she could barely see more than a few steps ahead. Yet somehow, wherever Kale walked, the storm seemed to part. The air bent to him, the wind whispering his name. Behind them, Shadowfang territory lay silent. Not a wolf dared move or speak until Kale's shadow had vanished beyond the tree line. Arya didn't look back. She couldn't. Her legs ached, her bare feet numb from the cold, but Kale kept a steady pace, matching his stride to hers. Every so often, he would glance at her, and the snow would soften its fall as if the storm itself obeyed his unspoken command. When they reached the frozen river at the edge of the valley, Kale paused. The moonlight shimmered on the ice, and Arya could see faint reflections of stars through the clear surface. Here, Kale said quietly. The river marks the end of Shadowfang land. Once we cross, you are no longer theirs. Arya hesitated. What if they follow? They won't, he said simply. They know what happens to those who challenge the Northern Crown. He extended his hand to her again. For a moment, she looked at it, the same hand that had ended her pack's cruelty, that had pulled her out of the snow, and then she took it. As they stepped onto the ice, it didn't crack or creak beneath their weight. Instead, the surface shimmered faintly, glowing with silver light where Kale's boots touched. "You're using magic," Arya murmured. "I'm using control," Kale replied. "The magic comes from the moon. I simply remind it who I am." They crossed safely to the other side. Once her feet touched solid ground again, Arya turned back one last time. Through the snow, she could just barely see the outline of her former home, the place where she'd been rejected, humiliated, and left to die. It already looked small and distant. Kale watched her for a moment before saying softly, "You don't have to mourn what never deserved you." Arya swallowed hard and nodded. "It still hurts." "I know," he said. "But pain is often the first language of strength." They continued walking until the trees thickened and the night turned silent again. Arya's exhaustion caught up to her. Her body trembled, her teeth chattered. Without a word, Kale slipped off his cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was heavier than it looked, lined with fur and warm as fire. She blinked up at him. "You'll freeze," she said. He shook his head. "The cold doesn't touch me." She didn't argue. Her body leaned slightly toward him, drawn by his warmth, his strength, his impossible calm. Hours later, when her legs could no longer carry her, Kale lifted her effortlessly into his arms. She gasped in surprise. "You don't have to. Rest," he said. "I told you. You are safe now." She wanted to protest, to insist she could walk, but the steady rhythm of his heartbeat lulled her into silence. The night blurred into motion, snow, wind, and silver light. By the time she opened her eyes again, the sun had begun to rise. They stood before massive gates carved into the side of a mountain. Each gate was inlaid with glowing silver runes that pulsed faintly in time with her heartbeat. "This," Kale said, "is Eclipse Reach, the heart of the Northern Crown." The gates opened soundlessly. As they stepped inside, Arya's breath caught. Towers of black stone rose from the cliffs, connected by bridges of crystal. Wolves patrolled the walls, their fur shining like polished steel. The entire fortress hummed with an ancient power that made her skin prickle. Kale carried her through a long corridor, past murals of wolves beneath moons, until they reached a grand chamber lit by hundreds of silver lanterns. "Rest here," he said, setting her gently on a couch near the fire. "You're safe within these walls." Arya looked around, her eyes wide. "It's beautiful, and terrifying." Kale smiled faintly. "That's an accurate description of the North." He handed her a cup of something warm that smelled faintly of honey and spice. "Drink. It will help you recover." She took a sip. The heat spread through her chest, easing the ache in her limbs. For a while, Kale stood in silence, watching the flames. Then he said, "I know this is a lot to take in. But the sooner you understand what you are, the sooner we can keep you safe." Arya nodded slowly. "You keep saying what I am instead of who I am." Kale's expression didn't change. "Because your existence is more than identity. It's power. And power always draws enemies. Do you have enemies?" He gave a short laugh, not bitter, but old. "Every ruler does." He looked at her again, eyes softening. "But now that I've found you, I have something new to protect." Before she could respond, a knock sounded at the door. A young woman entered, bowing respectfully. "My king, the rooms have been prepared." Kale nodded. "Good. See that the queen's quarters are stocked and guarded." Arya blinked. "Queen." Kale met her gaze. "In time. For now, it is a title of protection. No one will question it." When the servant left, Arya whispered, "You didn't have to call me that." He tilted his head slightly. "I don't say things I don't mean." The fire cracked softly between them. Arya didn't know what to say, so she looked down at the cup in her hands. Outside, the wind roared against the mountain walls, but inside, all was still. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew this. She had crossed the river, and there was no going back. Morning came late in Eclipse Reach. The sun's light reached the fortress only after climbing over miles of peaks and stone. Arya woke to the sound of distant bells and the faint scent of pine smoke drifting through her window. She was no longer wearing the ceremonial dress from her trial. Instead, Someone had dressed her in a soft tunic of grey wool. Her room was larger than the entire cabin she had once shared with her grandmother. A large bed draped with furs stood against one wall, a silver mirror on another, and beyond the windows stretched the endless world of snow. For a moment, she lay still, listening to her own heartbeat. Everything that had happened, Damon's rejection, the trial, Cale's arrival, felt like a story someone else had lived. Then came a knock on the door. "Enter," she said hesitantly. A woman stepped inside, tall, with white-streaked hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore dark armor trimmed in silver. "Good morning, Lady Arya," the woman said. "I am Commander Lyra of the Northern Guard. His Majesty asked me to escort you to breakfast." Arya nodded uncertainly and followed her through the halls. Everywhere she looked, wolves bowed or placed fists over their hearts. It made her uneasy. Lyra must have noticed. "They're not used to seeing the king with company," she said lightly. "He keeps few people close." "How long have you known him?" Arya asked. "Since before he became king," Lyra replied. "And I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Arya blushed and said nothing. They reached a large dining hall where Cale stood by the window, reading a scroll. When he saw her, he set it aside and gestured to the seat beside him. "You slept well?" he asked. "Yes. It's quiet here. It is the only place where I can think," he said. "The mountain keeps unwanted noise out." Servants brought trays of fruit, bread, and roasted meat. Arya hesitated before eating, but Cale nodded for her to begin. "You need strength," he said. "Your body must adapt before we begin training." She frowned. "Training for what?" "To awaken your wolf fully," Cale replied. "You've already felt her stir. We will teach her to answer when you call." Arya looked down at her hands. "What if she doesn't want to?" "She will," he said, tone confident. "She has waited too long." After they ate, Cale led her outside through a series of arches until they reached a vast open courtyard surrounded by black pines. The air was sharp and cold, but sunlight filtered through the mist. "This will be our training ground," Cale said. "No one will disturb us here." Arya hugged her arms. "I don't know what to do." "Then listen," he said gently. "Everything begins with balance. Close your eyes." She obeyed. "Breathe," Cale continued. "Feel the air. Feel the bond between us. It's not something you think about, it's something you sense." She inhaled slowly. The air felt alive against her skin. Beneath it, faint but clear, was a pulse that wasn't hers, steady, deep, like the beat of distant drums. "That's it," Cale murmured. "Now, reach toward it." Arya focused, and the pulse grew louder. She could sense Cale's presence, calm and strong. Then she felt something else, a deeper rhythm beneath her own chest. Her eyes flew open. "It's happening again." "Let it," Cale said, stepping closer. "Don't fight it." The world tilted. Her skin tingled, her heartbeat quickened, and silver light began to glow faintly along her arms. Her vision sharpened until she could see every flake of snow drifting in the air. Then came the surge, wild, raw energy coursing through her. "Cale." He caught her before she fell. "Steady. It's your wolf. Don't resist her. Guide her." "I can't." "Yes, you can. Use me as your anchor. Follow the bond." She clung to the thread connecting them, imagining it as a silver line through the chaos. Slowly, the rush began to calm. Her breathing steadied. The light dimmed. When it was over, she was trembling, but she was still standing. Cale's hands rested lightly on her shoulders. "Well done," he said softly. "You didn't lose control." Arya looked up at him, dazed. "That was incredible. I could feel everything, the air, the earth, even your heartbeat." "That is the beginning of true power," Cale said. "And it's only a fraction of what you can become." For the first time, a smile flickered across her lips. "Maybe I'm not as weak as they thought." Cale's gaze warmed. "You never were." They trained until the sun began to set. By the end, Arya was exhausted but exhilarated. Her fear had lessened, replaced by something fierce and alive. As they walked back toward the fortress, Cale said quietly, "Tomorrow we continue. Each time, your control will grow. Each time, your wolf will trust you more. Arya nodded, feeling a strange pride bloom in her chest. Thank you, for believing in me. Kale stopped, turning to face her. The dying light caught the silver in his eyes. Belief has nothing to do with it, he said. I see what's already there. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The air between them shimmered tension, warmth, something that felt dangerously close to fate. Then Kale turned away, his voice quieter now. Rest, Arya. Tomorrow, your Real training begins. She watched him go, her pulse still racing, her wolf stirring inside her chest. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready to meet it. The next morning broke with pale sunlight spilling over the mountains. Arya rose before the bells. The air in her chamber was cold but sharp with life, the kind that woke her bones and reminded her she was no longer the fragile girl of Shadowfang. She dressed in the simple training clothes laid out for her: dark pants, a fitted tunic, and a leather belt that bore the crest of the Northern Crown. When she stepped outside, Kale was already waiting in the courtyard. His hair caught the morning light like silver threads, and his breath misted faintly in the air. He didn't wear armor today, only a dark shirt and gloves, but even like this, he looked every inch a king, still, controlled, dangerous. You're early, he said as she approached. I couldn't sleep, Arya admitted. I keep hearing something. A voice, but it's not human. It whispers when I close my eyes. Kale nodded, as if he had expected it. Your wolf, he said simply. She's stirring more every day. I can't understand her. You will. But first, you must learn to listen properly. He motioned for her to follow him into the woods beyond the fortress. The path wound through ancient trees that glowed faintly with frost. The air was heavy with magic. Do you feel that? Kale asked quietly. Arya closed her eyes. Beneath the rustle of branches and the distant cry of hawks, she felt something else, a rhythm, deep and steady, as if the earth itself was breathing. I feel life, she said. Kale smiled faintly. Good. The Moonborn were always close to nature. You are part of it, not above it. That's why your wolf sleeps, because you were trapped too long in a place that denied your nature. He stopped at a clearing where sunlight spilled through the trees. Here, he said, taking her hands. Now we begin. Kale guided her into the center of the clearing. Breathe, he murmured. Feel the bond again, the silver thread between us. Arya obeyed. The air shimmered faintly, and she could sense him, his steady strength, his heartbeat like thunder in her blood. Now, Kale said, voice low, reach past it. Go deeper. Find the part of you that you've never touched before. She's there, waiting. Arya's breath came faster. She closed her eyes and reached inward. At first there was nothing but darkness, then, slowly, a flicker of light. It moved like a heartbeat, pulsing faintly. She followed it. And then she heard it. A growl. Soft, feminine, powerful. The voice that had whispered in her dreams grew clearer now, echoing through her mind like a song half remembered. You left me sleeping too long. Arya gasped, her eyes flying open. She spoke. Kale stepped closer, his voice calm. What did she say? She's angry, Arya whispered. She says I left her alone. Kale nodded once. Then tell her she's not alone anymore. Arya closed her eyes again, focusing on that inner flame. I'm here, she said silently. I didn't know how to find you. The air around her began to hum. The wind picked up, swirling in a spiral of silver dust. She could feel her blood racing, her heart beating with something vast and ancient. Kale's voice reached her through the storm. Don't fight it. Let her rise. A scream tore from Arya's throat, not of pain, but of release. Silver light burst from her skin, swirling around her like ribbons. Her hair lifted, her eyes glowed, and for a brief, blinding moment, she saw her reflection in the shimmer of the air, a wolf of moonlight and fire, watching her from within. Then the light dimmed. Arya dropped to her knees, gasping. Kale was beside her instantly, steadying her. Easy. You did it. Her chest heaved. I saw her. She was beautiful, and terrifying. That's how power always looks before you learn to shape it, Kale said softly. You touched your wolf for the first time. From now on, she'll never truly sleep again. Arya looked up at him, dazed but exhilarated. I didn't think I could do it. He smiled, just a small curve of his lips, but it reached his eyes. You underestimate yourself, Arya of the Moonline. You carry the strength of the ancients. She laughed shakily. And here I thought I was just surviving. You're doing more than surviving, Kale said. You're beginning. He helped her to her feet, his hand lingering at her back. When she met his gaze, there was something there she hadn't seen before, warmth beneath the silver, a rare spark of something human. Rest now, he said quietly. You'll need your strength for what's next. As they walked back to the fortress, the forest seemed to hum with new life. The snow shimmered faintly under her feet, as though recognizing her steps. For the first time, Arya didn't just feel alive. She felt powerful. That night, Arya couldn't sleep. The room was quiet, the fire still burning low, but her mind refused to rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt her wolf pacing inside her, restless, awake. Finally, she got up and stepped out onto her balcony. The moon hung full and silver above the mountains, painting the world in soft light. She rested her hands on the stone railing and whispered, You're still here, aren't you? Her wolf's voice answered in her mind, softer now. Always. He woke me, but you keep me alive. Arya smiled faintly. You sound calmer now. Because he's near, the wolf said. He steadies us. Before Arya could ask what she meant, the door opened behind her. Kale stepped out, his presence like a quiet storm. I felt your energy shift, he said. You couldn't sleep. I didn't mean to wake you, she said quickly. You didn't, Kale replied. Our bond did. He joined her at the railing, looking out over the snow. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them felt heavy but not uncomfortable, filled with unspoken things. Arya finally said, She talks to me now. My wolf. She sounds old. Kale nodded. The Moonline wolves are ancient beings. They remember the first light. You're connected to something greater than time. She turned toward him, her expression searching. You keep saying things like that about fate, about power. But what about you, Kale? Who keeps you steady? His jaw tightened slightly. I don't need anyone to steady me. Everyone does, she said quietly. He met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw something behind his calm loneliness, deep and quiet, like a wound that had never healed. Before I became king, he said slowly, I lost everything. My family, my pack. Power was all I had left to protect what remained. It's easier to be feared than to lose again. Arya's chest ached. And yet you saved me. Kale looked away, his eyes glinting in the moonlight. I didn't plan to. The moment I felt your pain, I couldn't ignore it. The bond pulled me. I thought it was a trick of fate, until I saw you. She swallowed. And now, he said quietly, I know why the moon wouldn't let me rest. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Arya felt her heart race. The bond that had flickered faintly since the night he found her now pulsed stronger, warmer, like a heartbeat shared between two souls. Kale stepped closer. You feel it too, don't you? She nodded. It's like I can sense you even when I'm not looking. That's the echo bond, Kale said. A connection that forms between fated wolves before the full bond seals. It lets us feel each other's emotions, thoughts, sometimes even pain. Arya blinked. That's why I feel calmer when you're near. He smiled faintly. And why I can't stop thinking when you're not. Her breath caught. She didn't know what to say. The silence that followed was thick, charged with something she didn't dare name. Then Kale said softly, This bond, it's not meant to trap you. You still have a choice. I want you to understand that. A choice. Yes. His voice dropped lower. When the bond completes, our lives will be tied. Every heartbeat, every breath. If you don't want that, I will never force it. Arya looked up at him, the firelight from her room reflecting in his eyes. Why would you give me that choice? You're a king. You could command it. Kale's lips curved into a faint smile. Because command and love are not the same thing. Her heart thudded painfully. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said simply. Enough to want to learn the rest. He turned away then, as if the air between them had grown too tight. Come, he said softly. There's something I want to show you. He led her through the quiet corridors of the fortress until they reached a vast chamber she hadn't seen before. The walls were lined with glass panels that looked out over the valley below. At the center stood a pool of still water, reflecting the moonlight. This is the Mirror Hall, Kale said. It's where the Moonline kings and queens once communed with their wolves. Arya approached the pool cautiously. The surface rippled faintly, glowing silver. It's beautiful. Kale nodded. Look into it. She knelt beside the pool and peered into the water. For a moment, she saw her reflection, then it shifted. The image in the water changed into the luminous wolf she'd seen before, eyes bright with starlight. Her wolf's voice whispered through the chamber. He is bound to us, as we are to him. You know this. Arya's pulse quickened. What does she mean? She asked. Kale's voice came from behind her, quiet but steady. She means what you already feel. Our souls are tied. The bond is already forming, even if it isn't sealed. She turned to face him. And if I never seal it? Then I will still protect you, Kale said. Because the bond doesn't need to be complete for me to care. Arya's breath caught. You really believe that? I don't believe, he said. I know. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of magic. Kale moved closer, his steps slow and measured. When he reached her, he extended his hand. Trust me, he said. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The moment their fingers touched, the pool flared with light. The bond between them pulsed, alive and brilliant. Arya felt his emotions like her own, his strength, his weariness, his desire to protect her, his fear of losing her. It overwhelmed her. She gasped and tried to pull away, but he held her steady. Breathe, Kale murmured. You're not alone in this. The energy between them settled. Slowly, the light dimmed, leaving only the soft glow of moonlight on their faces. Arya looked up at him, eyes wide. I felt you. All of you. Kale nodded. That's the echo bond. It lets you feel truth without words. Her chest tightened. It's a lot. It is, he agreed. But it's real. They stood there for a long moment, neither speaking. The bond hummed softly between them, no longer a thread but a living thing. Finally, Kale said, you should rest. Tomorrow, we'll begin your true awakening. As he turned to leave, Arya's voice stopped him. Kale. He looked back. If this bond already feels this strong, she asked softly, what will it be like when it's complete? Kale's silver eyes caught the moonlight. Like nothing you've ever known, he said. And everything you've ever been waiting for. He left her with those words, the echo of his heartbeat still thrumming in her chest. When she looked into the mirror again, her wolf smiled faintly. He speaks truth, the wolf whispered. But the question is, will you be brave enough to claim it? Arya touched the cool surface of the water and whispered back, I think I will. Days turned into weeks, and within the cold walls of Eclipse Reach, Arya grew stronger. Every morning began before sunrise. Kale would meet her in the training courtyard, where the snow never melted but the air shimmered faintly with magic. Her movements had become sharper, her control steadier. Each time she reached for her power, it answered faster, more willingly. But strength was never without consequence. The stronger she became, the more the outside world began to take notice. Rumors spread through the northern territories, whispers of the Alpha King's mysterious new mate, of a woman who wielded moonlight and fire. Some said she was a blessing. Others, a curse. One night, Kale stood on the highest balcony of the fortress, watching the horizon darken with clouds. Arya joined him quietly, her breath misting in the cold air. You've been uneasy all day, she said. Something's wrong. Kale didn't answer right away. His eyes, sharp and distant, searched the mountains as though he could see beyond them. Messages have arrived, he said finally. 3 packs have refused my summons. They question my right to abolish the old laws. The same laws that nearly killed me, Arya said softly. Yes, Kale replied. They call me weak for interfering. They say I've let a woman, his jaw tightened. A rejected omega, cloud my judgment. Arya's chest tightened. You think they'll attack? They'll try, he said. But they forget who I am. She stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. And they forget who I'm becoming. Kale looked down at her then, the edge in his expression softening. You sound like a queen already. Arya smiled faintly, though worry lingered in her eyes. What if they're right to be afraid? My power still feels wild. Sometimes I think I could burn everything if I let it go. Kale turned to face her fully, his silver eyes steady. Power doesn't corrupt, Arya. It reveals. And what I see in you is not destruction, it's truth. His words steadied her. Still, that night she couldn't sleep. The whispers outside the fortress had reached her even here. She'd overheard servants speaking in hushed voices, saying the moon had sent her as both gift and warning. She walked to her balcony and looked down at the valley below. The sky was covered in thick clouds, hiding the moon. You feel it too, her wolf murmured inside her mind. Arya closed her eyes. Yes. Something's coming. The old ones stir, her wolf said. Change always awakens those who fear it. A knock came at her door. When she turned, Kale entered, dressed in dark armor etched with runes that glowed faintly like starlight. Scouts spotted movement beyond the eastern ridge, he said. A coalition of packs gathering in secret. Arya frowned. You're going to fight? I'll meet them first, he said. Words before war. Then I'm coming with you. Kale's brow furrowed. No. Kale. You're not ready, he said firmly. Your wolf is awake, but not yet trained for battle. If they see you before your strength is complete, they'll think it's weakness. Arya crossed her arms. I'm not afraid of them. I know, Kale said. That's what worries me. They stared at each other in silence for a moment. Finally, he sighed. You will stay here and continue your training with Lyra. I'll return before dawn. Arya didn't argue further, but as she watched him disappear into the night, she felt a cold twist of unease in her chest. The fortress felt emptier without him. Shadows seemed to whisper from the corners of the halls. Every creak of the old stone made her turn her head. Lyra joined her later that night for another training session. Your control has improved, Lyra said, circling her as Arya concentrated on channeling her energy into her hands. Silver light shimmered at her fingertips, steady and bright. Focus on what you feel, Lyra instructed. The power obeys emotion. Don't suppress it, shape it. Arya exhaled slowly, imagining the light forming into a small orb. It floated above her palm, pulsing softly. Lyra smiled. Good. You're learning faster than any wolf I've seen. Because I have to, Arya said. Because if I don't, Kale could die out there. The orb wavered slightly, then stabilized again. Lyra's expression softened. You care for him. Arya hesitated. I don't know what to call it. But when he's gone, I feel incomplete. That's the bond, Lyra said gently. It grows stronger with time. Soon, you'll be able to sense his emotions across any distance. Arya swallowed hard. Then why can't I feel him now? Lyra frowned. Because he's masking it. He doesn't want you to sense what he's facing. That answer only made Arya more anxious. By midnight, she stood on her balcony again, staring at the storm clouds gathering in the east. Lightning flashed far away, briefly illuminating the mountains. Her wolf stirred restlessly. He's in danger. Arya gripped the railing. I can't just sit here. Then wake me fully, the wolf whispered. If you want to protect him, stop fearing what you are. Arya took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and reached inward once more. This time, she didn't hold back. The light that had once flickered faintly within her burst open. It was wild, vast, and alive. The bond between her and Kale flared so bright it burned through her chest. For a heartbeat, she felt him, pain, fury, and a surge of power unlike anything she'd ever known. Then the connection snapped back into silence. Arya's eyes opened, glowing silver. Hold on, Kale, she whispered. I'm coming. The night wind howled like a chorus of wolves as Arya ran through the forest. She had never moved so fast in her life. The snow barely slowed her, the air itself seemed to part for her. Her wolf guided her steps, whispering directions through instinct. Faster, the voice urged. He bleeds. Arya didn't ask how she knew. The bond pulsed painfully in her chest, tugging her toward the mountains. The storm that loomed earlier had broken loose, lightning flashing above the ridges. When she reached the ridge, the scent of blood hit her, sharp, metallic, unmistakable. Below, in a clearing, Kale stood surrounded by wolves in their full forms, massive beasts with black and brown fur, eyes burning with rebellion. His armor was torn, his sword slick with blood, but he still stood tall, his power crackling in the air like fire. Arya's heart clenched. He was outnumbered 20-1. Without thinking, she jumped. Her feet hit the ground hard, sending snow flying. Every wolf turned toward her, snarling. Kale's head snapped around. Arya, I told you to stay. I'm not leaving you, she said, her voice trembling but clear. The wolves hesitated, uncertain. One stepped forward, growling low. The false queen dares to show herself. Arya met his gaze. You call me false because you're afraid of the truth. The rebel alpha lunged. Arya raised her hands instinctively. A burst of silver energy exploded outward, knocking him back several meters. The air shimmered, and the scent of ozone filled the clearing. Kale's eyes widened. Arya, your control. I'm done being afraid, she said. The other wolves hesitated, growling uncertainly. But their leader roared, rallying them. Kill them both. They charged. Kale met the first wave, his blade flashing like lightning. Arya stood her ground, focusing on her power. She felt her wolf rise inside her, stronger than ever before. Let me through, her wolf whispered. Together. Arya closed her eyes and surrendered. The world exploded in light. Her body bent and shifted, bones cracking but not in pain, in release. Her skin shimmered, her senses exploded outward. When she opened her eyes again, she was no longer standing on two legs. A silver wolf stood where she had been, her fur glowing faintly under the storm's light. Her eyes blazed like the moon itself. The rebels faltered. Even Kale froze for a heartbeat, or flickering across his face. Arya, he breathed. She turned her head toward him and growled softly, not in warning, but in acknowledgement. Then she leaped into the fight. Her movements were pure grace and power. She tore through the rebel wolves like wind through fog, her strikes precise, her instincts flawless. Each time one lunged, she met it with a burst of raw energy that sent them sprawling. Kale fought beside her, their movements perfectly in sync. The bond between them pulsed with every heartbeat, their power feeding off each other's strength. Within minutes, the clearing was silent except for the sound of their breathing. The remaining rebels fled into the forest, their courage shattered. As the storm eased, Arya stood panting beside Kale. Slowly, her form shimmered, shifting back into human. Her knees buckled, but Kale caught her before she fell. Easy, he said softly, lowering her to the snow. You did it. Her chest heaved. I thought it would hurt, but it didn't. It wasn't pain, Kale said. It was awakening. She looked up at him, eyes still faintly glowing. You could have died. He smiled faintly. And you could have too. Yet here we stand. Arya's throat tightened. I felt you through the bond. I felt your pain, and something inside me just broke free. Kale brushed a strand of hair from her face. That was your wolf answering her mate's call. Her eyes widened. Mate's call? He nodded slowly. You may not have spoken the vows, but the bond between us grows stronger each time we fight together, each time we trust one another. What happened tonight sealed it in part. Arya blinked, realization dawning. Part. Kale's gaze softened. The bond will be complete when you accept it fully, when you choose me, not just as your protector, but as your equal. Arya didn't answer immediately. She stared at him, this man who ruled worlds and still looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered. Finally, she whispered, then maybe I already have. Kale's breath caught, but before he could respond, the wind shifted. The snow had stopped, and dawn's first light spilled over the mountains. He helped her stand, his arms steady around her. Let's go home. As they walked back through the forest, The wolves that had fled watched from a distance, silent, awed. The stories would spread before the sun even set of the silver wolf who fought beside the Alpha King, the reborn heir of the moonline who could command the light itself. But to Arya, it wasn't legend. It was truth. And it had only just begun. The dawn after the battle came quiet and pale. The forest lay still beneath a thin veil of mist, the ground marked by the scars of the night before, scorched snow, broken branches, streaks of blood already freezing under the light. Kale and Arya reached Eclipse Reach by mid-morning. The guards at the gates bowed deeply as the pair entered, their eyes wide with awe. Whispers spread like wildfire. The king had fought with the silver wolf. Arya could feel their stares as she walked, but Kale kept his arm around her, steady and sure. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "They fear what they don't yet understand." "I'm not sure I understand it either," Arya admitted. "One moment I was human, the next I was something else entirely. It didn't feel like shifting, it felt like becoming." Kale's mouth curved faintly. "That's what the Moonborn are. Not wolves that shift into humans, or humans that turn to wolves, but beings that become both at once." He led her through the fortress to the training chamber. "Sit," he said. "We need to see how much of your power remains." Arya lowered herself to the floor, still feeling the strange pulse of energy thrumming beneath her skin. Her hands trembled faintly. Kale knelt across from her, eyes steady. "Close your eyes," he said. "Find your center." Arya obeyed. She drew in a deep breath, reaching for the silver glow inside her. It responded instantly, rising through her veins like fire under ice. "Good," Kale murmured. "Now, don't release it. Hold it." Control is not about suppression, it's about harmony. The energy built, pressing against her ribs, her chest, her throat. Sweat beaded at her temples. "It's too much," she gasped. "It's going to break me." "No," Kale said. His voice was calm, but it carried command. "It's not stronger than you. You are its vessel. Breathe." Arya tried, but the power kept rising, searing through her like lightning. She cried out. Kale reached across the space between them, grasping her hands. "Look at me," he said sharply. Her eyes flew open. His silver gaze met hers, steady, bright, unyielding. "You're safe," he said. "Anchor yourself in me. Feel the bond." Arya focused on the thread that tied them, that strange golden pulse connecting her chest to his. It flared alive, carrying his calm into her storm. Slowly, her breathing steadied, the power settling inside her like a tamed flame. Kale didn't release her hands. "That's it," he said softly. "Now, control it." She exhaled shakily. "If I didn't have you, you would still manage," he said. "But I'd rather you didn't have to." Their hands were still joined, and the energy between them hummed low and electric. When she tried to pull back, his grip tightened, not in command, but in connection. "Kale," she whispered. "Why do you always know what to say?" His mouth twitched in something that might have been a smile. "I don't. I just speak what I feel." Something in his voice made her heart stumble. She looked down, but Kale reached forward and tipped her chin upward. His fingers were cool against her skin, yet they left a trail of warmth. "Do you trust me, Arya?" he asked. She nodded. "More than I should." "Then stop thinking." Before she could reply, his lips met hers. The world went silent. The bond between them flared white-hot, flooding her senses. She could feel his heartbeat pounding against hers, feel his emotions rushing through her, strength, protectiveness, something fierce and tender all at once. When the kiss broke, Arya was breathless. Kale's hand still cupped her face, his thumb brushing lightly across her cheek. "Your control comes from focus," he said softly. "And sometimes, focus comes from the heart." Arya's thoughts scattered. She started, but words failed her. Kale stood, offering his hand. "That's enough for today." She took it, still reeling. As they walked out into the courtyard, she asked, "Does the bond feel different to you now?" He looked down at her, eyes gleaming faintly. "It feels stronger," he said. "More alive." She swallowed hard. "I'm not sure if that's good or terrifying." "Both," Kale said with a smile. "That's how you know it's real." That night, Arya dreamed. She stood beneath an enormous moon that burned silver and blue, the light falling on a field of snow. In the distance, a wolf howled a cry filled with grief and power. When she turned, she saw her own reflection in the ice, not human, not wolf, but something between, crowned with light. "You are the bridge," a voice whispered. "The last of the moonline. The world will rise or fall through you." She woke with her heart racing. The next morning, Kale called a council meeting in the Grand Hall. For the first time, Arya was seated beside him, a mark of equal standing. The room buzzed with quiet tension as alphas from neighboring packs gathered, leaders who had pledged loyalty to the Northern Crown. When Kale rose, the hall fell silent. "You've all heard the rumors," he said. "They're true. The moonline lives again." A murmur swept through the crowd. Arya felt the weight of their gazes on her, curious, fearful, some even reverent. "She is the last heir," Kale continued. "The moon itself bears witness." One alpha, a broad-shouldered man with golden eyes, stood. "With respect, my king," he said cautiously, "the moonline was said to bring both salvation and ruin. How can we be sure which this woman represents?" Kale's voice turned cold. "You question my judgment." "I question prophecy," the man replied. Before Kale could respond, another voice echoed through the hall, a woman's, old and resonant. "She questions what she was born to fulfill." All eyes turned toward the entrance. A figure cloaked in gray walked slowly down the aisle, her hair long and white as snow. Kale straightened, recognition flashing across his face. "Seer Ellen," he said. "You were not summoned." "I go where the moon calls," the seer replied. Her gaze fell on Arya, sharp as moonlight. "And it has called me here." Arya stood instinctively, uncertain. "You know me?" Ellen smiled faintly. "I knew your grandmother. She carried the same fire you do." Kale stepped forward. "Speak plainly, seer. What does the prophecy say?" The old woman's voice dropped low. "When the blood of the lost heir awakens, the night will bow to her call. The Alpha King shall rise beside her, and together they will end the age of wolves as it has been." A ripple of alarm moved through the hall. "End the age of wolves," one Alpha repeated. "Does that mean destruction?" Ellen's eyes gleamed. "Not destruction, rebirth. The moonline's return will tear down the old and bring forth the new. But beware, light and shadow are twins. One cannot rise without the other." She turned to Arya, her expression grave. "You were born to balance the world, child. But if fear takes your heart, that balance will break and everything will burn." The hall was utterly silent. Kale's gaze flicked toward Arya. "She won't fail," he said quietly. Ellen smiled. "That depends on whether she can face what comes next." Before anyone could question her, the seer raised her hands. Silver mist swirled around her, and she vanished, leaving only the echo of her voice behind. Later, in Kale's private chamber, Arya paced restlessly. "End the age of wolves," she repeated. "What does that even mean?" Kale stood by the window, his back to her. "It means the world will change," he said. "The old hierarchies will fall, the cruelty, the dominance, the endless wars. That's what I've been fighting for." Perhaps the prophecy is just another way of saying the same thing. "But she said I could destroy everything," Arya pressed. Kale turned to face her. "Only if you lose yourself to fear. And I won't let that happen." Arya met his gaze. "You can't control fate, Kale." "No," he said. "But I can stand beside it." His calm steadied her more than words could. Still, the seer's warning lingered like a shadow in her mind. "Do you believe her?" she asked quietly. Kale paused, then nodded. "Ellen has never been wrong. But I believe in you more." She gave a shaky laugh. "You shouldn't." "I should," he said. "Because every time you think you're breaking, you become stronger." He reached out, touching the pendant at her throat, the moon-shaped necklace her grandmother had given her. "This symbol was not meant to remind you of what you carry," he said softly. "It was meant to remind you of what you can choose to become." Arya swallowed hard. "And what if I choose wrong?" Kale's eyes softened. "Then I will burn with you. But I will never let you stand alone." The bond between them pulsed again, stronger than before. Arya felt it in her chest, her blood, her soul, their hearts moving in the same rhythm. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. A storm was coming. That night, unable to sleep, Arya wandered back to the mirror hall. The pool was calm again, the moon reflected perfectly in its surface. She knelt beside it, touching the water. Her reflection shifted, showing not her face but the silver wolf's again. "You fear prophecy," the wolf's voice said softly. "But prophecy fears you." Arya frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means you are not a puppet of fate. You are its maker. The moon may guide you, but you choose where to walk." Arya felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest. "Then I choose to fight for what's right. Then the world will follow." The water stilled. The wolf's reflection faded. When Arya stood, she saw Kale standing in the doorway, watching her. "I felt your bond stirring," he said. "You're getting stronger." "So is the storm," she replied. He nodded slowly. "Then we prepare." He walked to her, stopping close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Whatever happens next, Arya, remember this: you were never meant to be anyone's shadow. You are the moon itself." She met his gaze. "And what are you, then?" He smiled faintly. "The night that protects it." For a moment, they stood together in the silver light, the prophecy echoing quietly in their hearts. Neither of them knew what trials the next dawn would bring. But the moon shone brighter that night than it had in 1,000 years, as if the heavens themselves were watching the beginning of something destined to change the world. The prophecy spread faster than wildfire. By the end of the week, every pack in the northern lands had heard whispers of the Moonline Queen, the woman who could either save or end them. Some wolves called her the moon's chosen. Others called her a curse. And not all took kindly to Kale's command that the old laws were gone. It began with silence, letters that went unanswered, emissaries that never returned. Then, scouts brought darker news. Several packs had gathered in the borderlands under a single banner. At their head was a familiar name. Daemon. Arya's heart sank when she heard it. Kale stood before the war table, his hands resting on the map as Lyra and the other generals surrounded him. "His rallying the discontented," Kale said. "Those who thrived under cruelty, those who fear change." Lyra nodded grimly. "They call themselves the True Fang. They claim they're taking back honor for the old ways." Arya stared at the map, her pulse quickening. "He's doing this because of me." Kale's eyes softened but his voice stayed hard. "He's doing this because he's weak. You simply exposed what he always was." Arya looked down. "If people die because of me, they'll die because of him," Kale interrupted. "Don't carry his sins." She wanted to believe him. But that night, when she walked alone through the silent corridors of Eclipse Reach, guilt followed her like a shadow. From the balcony, she could see the valley below, small fires flickering where the scouts said enemy camps were forming. The darkness between them pulsed like a heartbeat. Her wolf stirred uneasily. "He comes not for war, but for vengeance," the voice murmured. Arya whispered, "Then let him find something stronger than he remembers." Behind her, a voice said softly, "You shouldn't be alone." She turned. Kale leaned in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I can't sleep," she admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces. The ones who'll die because of me." Kale walked to her side, his presence a calm force in the cold night. "They die for a future that should have existed long ago. You're not their curse, Arya. You're their hope." She looked up at him, the moonlight painting silver across his hair. "You sound so sure." "I have to be." His eyes glinted faintly. "A king who doubts dooms his people." Silence fell, thick with the tension neither wanted to name. Finally, Kale said, "The council meets at dawn. I want you there." "Why?" "Because they need to see who they're fighting for." Arya frowned. "You want me to speak?" Kale nodded. "Not as my mate. As their queen." The next morning, the grand hall was filled. Wolves in armor, commanders, messengers, every face tense with anticipation. When Kale entered with Arya at his side, the noise died instantly. "Last night," Kale said, "we confirmed what we already knew. Daemon and his rebels gather at our border. They think the old order can return." They think fear will win again. He stepped back, gesturing toward Arya. But fear died the night she rose. A low murmur spread through the hall. Arya's heart pounded, but Kale's faint nod anchored her. She took a step forward. "I'm not here to rule over anyone," she said, her voice trembling only slightly. "I'm here because I know what it means to kneel in the snow, waiting for death. I know what it means to be told you're nothing. I fought to survive, and I will fight so none of you ever have to." The crowd went still. "Daemon thinks he fights for strength," Arya continued. "But real strength isn't in cruelty. It's in unity. In choice. In standing together when others demand you bow." She lifted her chin. "He calls himself True Fang. But I call him what he is, a coward hiding behind tradition." Kale's lips curved faintly as murmurs of approval rippled through the room. When she finished, the wolves raised their fists, the hall filling with the sound of voices calling her name. Later, when the council dismissed, Kale caught her arm. "You did more for them in 2 minutes than I could have in 2 months." Arya smiled tiredly. "I just told them what I needed to hear once." He studied her, something unspoken in his gaze. "You're ready," he said finally. "For whatever comes." Outside, thunder rolled again, not from the sky, but from the earth. The enemy had begun to move. The first attack came 2 nights later. Arya woke to the sound of horns echoing through the mountains. She leapt from bed, her instincts screaming. Outside, the sky burned red not with fire, but with signal flares. Kale was already armored when she reached the war terrace. "They've surrounded the lower ridge," he said. "They're testing our defenses." "Then we test theirs," Arya said. He turned to her, and for once, he didn't argue. "Stay close to me." By dawn, the battlefield roared. Wolves clashed in both forms, silver against shadow, fire against fury. The snow ran red, steam rising from the ground where power struck power. Arya fought beside Kale, her energy like living light. Every motion she made was instinct, her wolf guiding her hand, her heart guiding her strength. A rebel lunged, claws outstretched, but Arya raised her arm, a shield of silver flame bursting forth. The attack bounced off harmlessly. She pushed outward, sending a wave of power that knocked him flat. Lyra fought near them, her blade flashing. "The eastern wall's holding, but not for long," she shouted. Kale growled low. "We hold it." He raised his hand, and a surge of power rippled through the fortress. The walls themselves seemed to come alive, glowing faintly with ancient sigils. Arya felt her wolf stir. "They're drawing strength from the moon. You can too." She closed her eyes, reaching upward. The light of the moon poured into her veins like water, cool and endless. When she opened her eyes again, everything burned silver. Wolves froze mid-battle, momentarily blinded by the brilliance. Kale turned, startled by the surge. "Arya, what are you doing?" She stepped forward, her voice carrying across the field. "I'm reminding them who the moon truly favors." Her power exploded outward in a wave. The ground cracked, ice splitting in lines of light. The enemy wolves stumbled, their weapons turning to frost in their hands. Then came a roar, a single, deep sound that made even Kale look up. From the trees, a massive black wolf emerged, its fur streaked with scars. "Daemon." "Enough," he shouted, shifting into his human form. "You think you've won because of a trick of light?" Arya's heart pounded. Daemon's face looked older, harder, but his eyes still carried the same arrogance she remembered. "This is your rebellion," she said. "Hiding behind men who fear change?" Daemon sneered. "You think you're their savior, Arya? You're a puppet. He's using you." He pointed at Kale. "The Alpha King plays the same game all rulers do, pretending to protect while taking everything for himself." Kale's power flared. "Watch your tongue before I cut it from your mouth." But Arya raised a hand. "No," she said quietly. "He wants us angry. He wants to divide us. I won't give him that." She stepped closer, her silver aura glowing brighter. "You rejected me once. You said I was unworthy. Look at me now, Daemon. Look at what your cruelty created." Daemon's eyes narrowed. "You think you've become something greater?" "I became what you were too afraid to be," she said simply. Before he could respond, she raised her hand and unleashed a burst of light that struck the ground between them. The shockwave knocked him back, sending cracks rippling through the ice. The rebel forces hesitated. Kale's army roared, surging forward. The battle turned. Arya could feel her power rising beyond control again, the same flood she'd felt during her first awakening. The energy clawed at her, wild and infinite. "Kale," she shouted. "I can't hold it." He was there in an instant, catching her by the shoulders. "Look at me. You're not alone. Anchor through me, now." She grabbed his arm, their bond flaring. The storm of power pouring through her began to steady, flowing through him in a perfect circuit. The ground's trembling ceased. The light faded to a steady glow. Kale held her gaze. "That's it," he murmured. "You're not a weapon. You're balance." Her breath came in shallow gasps, but the chaos had passed. The enemy forces broke completely, fleeing into the forest. When it was over, the battlefield was silent except for the wind. Snow began to fall again, covering the dead and the wounded alike. Lyra approached, blood streaked across her armor. "It's done," she said. "They're retreating. Daemon's gone." Kale nodded once. "Let him run. He'll see what is lost soon enough." Arya looked out over the field, exhaustion and relief warring inside her. So many dead. Kale touched her shoulder. "So many alive because of you." She turned to him, her eyes searching. "Do you think this is really over?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "No. Wars like this never end in a single night. But this was the first victory of a new age." Arya nodded slowly. Her power hummed faintly beneath her skin, no longer wild, but awake, ready. As they walked back toward the fortress, Kale's hand brushed hers. "You've done more than survive again," he said softly. "You've begun to lead." Arya looked up at the sky, where the clouds had finally broken to reveal the full moon shining bright. "I'm not the same girl he left to die," she said. "And I never will be again." Kale smiled faintly. "No," he said. "Now you're the queen he'll bow to." That night, as Eclipserich's fires burned low and the wounded were tended, Arya stood on the balcony overlooking the valley. The snow sparkled faintly under the moon. Her wolf's voice whispered softly, "The shadows will always return. But you are light. Remember that." Arya closed her eyes and let the words settle deep within her. The war was far from over, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the darkness. Because she had learned to fight not against it, but through it. The morning after the siege dawned quiet and heavy, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Smoke rose in thin ribbons from the lower valleys where the fires of battle still smoldered. The fortress walls bore scars of claw and flame. The air was thick with the scent of blood and ash. Arya moved among the wounded, her hands glowing faintly with silver light. She had learned, almost instinctively, how to channel her energy to heal. It drained her, but she couldn't stop. Every face she touched, every shallow breath that steadied, felt like a piece of redemption. Lyra approached, her arm bandaged but her eyes bright. "You should rest, my queen," she said softly. Arya shook her head. "Later. These people fought for me. I won't stop until they can stand again." Lyra hesitated, then bowed slightly. "As you wish. But the king, he hasn't left the war room since dawn." Arya frowned. "Kale? He's been studying the map," Lyra said. "He thinks Daemon's retreat was too easy." That cold twist of unease returned. "Show me." Kale stood at the war table, staring down at the map as if willing it to give him answers. His armor was still streaked with dried blood. When Arya entered, he looked up, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. "They're gone," she said. "You should rest." He shook his head. "No. Something's wrong." She came closer. "What do you mean?" "Daemon's forces didn't scatter," Kale said, tapping a point on the map near the southern ridge. "They regrouped here. The reports came an hour ago. He's drawing us out. I can feel it." Arya frowned. "You think it's a trap?" "I know it is." Before she could respond, a soldier burst through the doors, panting. "Your Majesty. The southern gate, there's movement. Heavy forces approaching fast." Kale's jaw tightened. "He's coming for us." Arya's pulse quickened. Then we finish it. The battle came before noon. The rebels struck with brutal precision, their front lines tearing through the forest like wildfire. Cale's troops rushed to defend the southern wall. Arya stayed at his side, her hands blazing with power. The clash was like thunder, metal and bone, cries and fire. Arya fought until her body ached, every strike a blend of fury and fear. Then she saw him. Daemon stood atop a ridge, his eyes fixed on her, a cruel smile twisting his mouth. Beside him, several wolves dragged something between them, bound, blooded, barely conscious. Arya's heart stopped. "Cale," she breathed. "It's one of ours." Cale followed her gaze. His face went pale. "No. It's..." The figure lifted its head weakly. It was Ellen, the seer. Her lips moved soundlessly, but Arya heard her voice in her mind. "Beware the second shadow." Then Daemon's men threw her down and vanished into the forest. Cale roared, his control cracking. "Lyra, hold the wall. Arya, stay here." He leapt from the parapet before she could stop him, landing hard in the snow below. The moment he disappeared into the trees, dread sank into Arya's bones. The battle raged on. Arya fought harder, pushing her power past exhaustion. She barely noticed when the enemy forces began to fall back until she realized they weren't retreating. They were encircling. "A trap." "Cale," she shouted through the bond. "Cale, it's a trap." There was no answer. Only silence. She ran into the forest, ignoring Lyra's cries behind her. The snow blurred beneath her feet, her lungs burning. The bond pulsed faintly, a flicker of pain, distant but real. She followed it, crashing through branches and shadows until she reached a clearing. Cale stood there, surrounded by enemies. Daemon faced him, sword drawn, his grin cruel. "So the great Alpha King comes alone," Daemon said. "How noble. How stupid." Cale's sword gleamed with moonlight. "You've already lost, Daemon. Walk away, and I'll let you live." Daemon laughed. "Still pretending mercy makes you stronger. You've gone soft." He lunged. Cale met him with a roar, their blades colliding in sparks of silver and red. They fought like storms, each strike a clash of power and fury. Arya stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, unable to move, watching every blow. Then she felt it, the bond twisting, screaming. Cale stumbled. Blood splattered across the snow. Daemon had driven his blade deep into his side. "No!" Arya screamed, running forward. Daemon turned toward her, sneering. "Ah, the queen arrives. Just in time to watch her king die." Arya's power exploded before he could move. The world went white. A wave of moonfire tore through the clearing, knocking everyone to the ground. The light burned through the trees, turning snow to steam. When it faded, Daemon was gone, vanished into the forest again, but Cale lay motionless in the snow. Arya fell to her knees beside him. His eyes fluttered open, faintly glowing. "You shouldn't have come." "Don't talk," she said, pressing her hands to the wound. Silver light poured from her palms, but the bleeding didn't stop. "You're going to be fine. You have to be." Cale smiled weakly. "Always so stubborn." "Because you taught me to be," she whispered. "Don't you dare leave me, Cale." His hand found hers, cold and shaking. "If I go, you lead. Promise me that." She shook her head violently. "No. You're not dying. Arya." His voice broke on her name. "You are the light this world needs. Don't let it fade." Then the bond flared once, bright, searing, and went still. Arya screamed. The sound shook the forest, raw and unending. Power burst from her body in a storm of silver flame, spiraling upward like a cyclone. The snow melted around her, the ground cracked, and every wolf within miles dropped to their knees. The moon itself seemed to tremble. When the light faded, the world was silent. Arya knelt in the snow, Cale's body in her arms, her tears freezing on his skin. The forest around them glowed faintly with the aftermath of her fury. For hours, she didn't move. Only when dawn's light touched the horizon did she finally rise. She closed his eyes gently and whispered, "You said power reveals what we are. Then let the world see what I've become." Her wolf stirred within her. Then rise, my queen. Let the dawn kneel. Arya stood, her aura flaring bright as the sun. When she returned to Eclipse Reach, the warriors waiting at the gates froze. Her silver light illuminated the courtyard, her eyes no longer just glowing, they burned. Lyra stepped forward, tears streaking her face. The king. Arya's voice was quiet, but it carried across the air. He fell for us. The crowd dropped to their knees. For a moment, silence reigned. Then Arya said, "But his will remains." She lifted her hand, and the moon symbol above the fortress blazed with light. From this day, there will be no kings. No slaves. No hierarchy of cruelty. We rise together, or we fall together. Her words echoed like thunder through the mountains. The wolves howled as one, not in grief, but in vow. That night, Arya stood alone in the mirror hall. The pool glowed faintly with silver light. Her reflection wavered, showing Kale standing behind her. Not solid, a vision, a memory. "You kept your promise," his voice whispered. Her throat tightened. "You said I'd never stand alone. And you never will," he said softly. "Our bond doesn't die. It transforms." The reflection faded, but the warmth in her chest remained. Weeks passed. Under Arya's command, the packs united. The broken territories began to heal. She rebuilt the council as a circle of equals, not rulers. Old punishments were abolished. Omegas rose to leadership, warriors to peacekeepers. The moonlight above Eclipse Reach seemed brighter now, no longer cold. But at night, Arya still went to the balcony, looking toward the southern ridge. Sometimes she swore she could hear Kale's voice in the wind. "The king died saving me," she whispered once to herself. "The queen rose avenging him." Her wolf answered, "And the world will remember both." One evening, as she watched the horizon, a messenger arrived, trembling, breathless. "My queen," he said. "A movement in the south. The last of Daemon's rebels are gathering again." Arya's eyes narrowed. "Then we finish what began." She turned, her silver cloak catching the moonlight. Her presence radiated command, not from pride, but from destiny. "Prepare the legions," she said. "The Queen of Wolves goes to war." By midnight, the army marched beneath banners of silver and blue. Snowflakes swirled in their wake, glowing faintly in her power's light. At the front, Arya walked alone for a moment, listening to the quiet beat of her heart and the faint echo of another. Kale's voice whispered through the bond, distant but steady. Together, even beyond the stars. Arya smiled through her tears. "Always." She raised her hand toward the moon, her power flaring in response. The wolves behind her lifted their voices, howling in perfect harmony, not mourning, but rebirth. The sound rolled across the mountains, deep and endless. And in that moment, the prophecy fulfilled itself. The old world ended. A new age began. The Queen of Wolves had risen. The storm of war had passed, but the echoes of it lingered like ghosts. Snow still blanketed the land outside Eclipse Reach, but beneath it, the world was changing. The air felt lighter, the silence not one of fear, but of rebuilding. Weeks turned into months, and the northern territories slowly learned to live under a new rule, one that spoke not of dominance, but of unity. Arya stood before the council hall, the great marble doors etched now with new words. Strength in mercy. Power in choice. The moon rises for all. Her hands brushed the carvings gently as she entered. The hall was filled with representatives from every pack: alphas, betas, omegas, and healers sitting side by side. The old seating arrangement of rank and status had been torn down. Now, all circles were equal. Lyra stood at Arya's right, her ever-present blade strapped to her back. "They still argue," she whispered. "About the territories, the boundaries, even hunting rights." Arya smiled faintly. "Then they're learning to speak instead of fight. That's progress." As the council quieted, Arya took her place at the center table. The sunlight from the high windows cast pale beams across her silver cloak. "The world we knew is gone," she began, her voice steady but warm. "We can either rebuild the same cruelty or build something that lasts." A few murmurs echoed, but no one interrupted. "From this day," she continued, "no wolf shall be judged by their birth or rank. There will be no more castes. No more punishments for bonds denied. No more trials by death. Her gaze swept the room. The laws of the past died with the last war. Our laws will be written in their ashes. One elder rose from the far end of the table, his grey fur streaked with white. And if some do not obey this new order? Arya's eyes glowed faintly. Then they will answer to me. The room fell silent. Lyra leaned closer, her voice a whisper. They'll follow you, Arya. They already do. Arya looked down at her hands, the faint scar from Kale's last battle still visible. They follow what Kale believed in, she said quietly. I just carry it forward. Lyra smiled. Then you carry it well. Later that evening, the fortress was quiet. Arya walked the outer ramparts alone, her cloak fluttering in the cold wind. The moon hung high above, bright and full. Every night it seemed to shine stronger, as though watching her. From the valley below, the wolves howled not in mourning, but in unity. For the first time in centuries, the sound wasn't a war cry. It was peace. Arya rested her hand on the stone railing, closing her eyes. You'd be proud, she whispered to the wind. Always, Kale's voice echoed faintly inside her. You've done what even I could not. You gave them hope. Her breath caught. It's strange. You're gone, but I still feel you. Because we were never meant to end. Bonds like ours don't die. They transform. A single tear slid down her cheek, vanishing into the cold air. Then stay with me. Just a little longer. Always, my queen. The whisper faded, leaving behind a warmth that filled the silence. By morning, the council's decisions spread through the land like sunlight through fog. The packs united under one banner, the Crescent Pact, each sworn to uphold the new law. Punishments for rejection, dominance trials, and blood oaths were abolished. Alphas and Omegas trained together, fought together, ruled together. Arya stood in the courtyard as the first decree was signed. The wolves gathered in ranks, and for the first time, she saw no eyes lowered in submission. Only respect. Lyra approached, holding out a silver circlet, plain, unadorned. They want to give you this, she said. As a symbol of the new order. Arya looked at it. A crown. A beginning, Lyra said simply. Arya took it and placed it upon her head. The weight was light, but it felt heavier than any armor she had ever worn. From the crowd, a chant rose, low at first, then building. Queen of Wolves. Queen of Wolves. Arya lifted her gaze to the sky, her heart pounding. Not queen above, she said softly, though her words carried far. Queen among. The chant turned to a howl, a single voice that rose to the heavens. And for a moment, Arya could have sworn she saw Kale standing in the light of the moon, watching her with pride. The moon bled red over the mountains. It was not an omen of death this time, but of remembrance. The blood moon came once every generation, the night when wolves honored the fallen and renewed their oaths. The courtyard of Eclipse Reach had been transformed into a sea of light. Thousands of lanterns floated in the air, glowing with silver and crimson fire. Arya stood at the center, dressed in white trimmed with silver, her hair flowing freely in the wind. The crown she wore now had changed, reforged from Kale's old armor and her own pendant. Two halves joined into one circle. Lyra approached with a small smile. It's time. Arya nodded, her heart steady. Then let them hear the truth of our age. She stepped onto the high dais. The crowd fell silent, eyes reflecting the moon above. When the old world burned, Arya began, her voice carrying effortlessly, we thought all that would remain was ash. But from that ash, something new rose, not ruled by kings or fear, but by us all. Her eyes scanned the faces below, warriors, healers, mothers, children. Every name carved on these walls belongs to someone who fought for this moment. Every drop of blood spilled brought us peace. She raised her hand toward the red moon. The blood moon is not a curse. It's a promise. It reminds us that even in loss, love endures. That power means nothing without compassion. That the weak are not born, they are made by those who forget their hearts. A ripple of emotion passed through the crowd. Arya's voice softened. Kale Draven, the last Alpha King, believed in a world where wolves stood as equals. He died to make it real. And I, his mate, his echo vow that his dream will never fade. She drew the moonlight down with a gesture. The sky responded, beams of silver and crimson weaving around her like ribbons. Her eyes glowed bright as she said, "Let this be the law of our land, under every moon that follows. No wolf shall kneel unwillingly, no heart shall be silenced by fear, and no bond shall be broken by force." The air trembled. The crowd knelt, but not in submission, in reverence. Lyra stepped forward, holding a goblet carved from moonstone. Inside was a single drop of Arya's own blood mixed with silver essence. Arya lifted it toward the sky. "By the blood of the old world and the light of the new, I crown not myself, but the dawn of peace." She poured the liquid onto the ground. Where it touched, a circle of silver fire spread outward, marking the foundation of a new era. The wolves began to howl, not mournfully, but triumphantly. The sound rose and echoed off the mountains, wild and beautiful. As the ceremony ended, Arya slipped away from the crowd, walking alone to the balcony that overlooked the valley. The red moon hung low now, glowing softer as dawn began to touch the edges of the world. She closed her eyes, feeling the cool wind against her skin. "It's done," she whispered. "No," a voice said softly in her mind. "It's only begun." Her heart skipped. "Kale." The air shimmered faintly beside her. For a heartbeat, she saw him not as flesh and bone, but as light and shadow, his silver eyes gentle. "You've carried us both," he said. "I didn't do it alone," she whispered. He smiled. "You never could." Tears filled her eyes. "I miss you. I'm part of you," he said. "Every choice, every victory, every breath. When the moon shines, I'll be there." The vision began to fade, but his last words lingered in the air. "Rule with the same heart that defied me once. That's what made you my equal." Arya reached out, but only the wind touched her fingers. "Goodbye," she whispered. "Never goodbye," his voice echoed faintly. "Only always." When she turned back to the courtyard, the first light of dawn had broken across the mountains. The red faded to gold, the night giving way to morning. Arya lifted her face to the sun. Around her, wolves stood side by side, Alpha and Omega, young and old, all united beneath the rising light. The world had changed. And though she stood alone now, she no longer felt empty. The bond that had once defined her now lived in every wolf that called her queen. She smiled, softly but with unshakable strength. "For him," she whispered, "for us all." Then, raising her voice so that every ear could hear, she declared, "Let the age of shadow end. Let the age of light begin." The wolves howled once more, their voices rising like a promise that would never break. Above them, the moon and sun shone together in rare harmony, a sign of balance, of unity, of rebirth. And in that moment, the legend of Arya, Queen of Wolves, was born not as myth, but as truth. Years later, stories of the Blood Moon Queen spread beyond the mountains. Children grew up hearing her name whispered with reverence. Her laws became the foundation of peace. Her strength became the measure of courage. And on quiet nights, when the moon turned crimson, wolves still looked to the sky and said softly, "She still watches." For in every flicker of moonlight, in every spark of unity, the bond endured. Not in death, but in eternity. And so the moon sets, but her story doesn't end here. From the ashes of betrayal, from the storm of war, a queen was born, and her legacy howls across time. If you felt her strength, her fire, her rise from nothing, don't let it fade with the last line. Join the pack. Be part of the story that keeps growing, one moon, one legend, one heartbeat at a time. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and step into the next chapter of this world, because more stories await beneath the blood moon, and this is only the beginning. Together, we rise. Together, we remember. Together, we reign.